Welcome to the Republican Professor. I'm your host, Dr. Lucas J. Mather. We are in contemporary American politics, going through Bill Voegeli's piece called Now What? The Democrats After 2024. Excellent piece. We're going to finish that today. This is the second episode in that dual episode series. Next, coming up, we have we're going to get back into the Second Amendment case that was called Duncan versus Bonta, and that's before the U.S. Supreme Court, being considered for cert right now. So we'll finish that this week. And then we're going to get into a book, do a transformative reading of a book by Chris Caldwell called The Age of Entitlement. We're going to start that. That's about the 60s and how the 60s affected the problems we're having today. And I'm this is going to be linked to the episodes we're doing on Bostock versus Clayton County, Georgia, which is about the 64 Civil Rights Act. So it's about the 60s and what happened in the 60s. And that will link very nicely with Chris Caldwell's piece it's his book. And so before we get to that, though, I started a process of reading Streams in the Desert last time. I did January 1st. I explained what we're doing there. It's from 1925. It's this book right here that I purchased at Old Town Books. What was it called? It was called Beachtown Books. Beachtown Books. Beachtown Books in San Clemente. Republican Town, Republican Bookstore. Wonderful little bookstore. I enjoy it. Give it a shot. It's right across from Pizza Port, if you know that. Here's January 2nd, 1925. And there was an enlarging and a winding about still upward to the side chambers. For the winding about of the house went still upward round about the house. Therefore the breadth of the house was still upward, and so increased from the lowest chamber to the highest by the midst. That's Ezekiel 41:7. Still upward be thine onward course. For this I pray today. Still upward as the years go by and seasons pass away. Still upward in this coming year. Thy path is all untried. Still upward mayest thou journey on close by thy Saviour's side. Still upward, e'en though sorrow come, and trials crush thine heart. Still upward may they draw thy soul with Christ to walk apart. Still upward till the day shall break, and shadows all have flown. Still upward till in heaven you wake, and stand before the throne. We ought not to rest content in the midst of the valley, when the summit of Tabor awaits us. How pure are the dews of the hills. How fresh is the mountain air. How rich the fare of the dwellers aloft, whose windows look into the New Jerusalem. I'm on the next page, page 3. Got a little bit more. Many saints are content to live like men in coal mines who see not the sun. Tears mar their faces when they might anoint them with celestial oil. Satisfied I am that many a believer pines in a dungeon when he might walk on the palace roof and view the goodly land and Lebanon. Rouse thee, O believer, from thy low condition. Cast away thy sloth, thy lethargy, thy coldness, or whatever interferes with thy chaste and pure love to Christ. Make love, make him the source, the center, and the circumference of all thy soul's range of delight. Rest no longer satisfied with thy dwarfish attainments. Aspire to a higher, a nobler, a fuller life, upward to heaven, nearer to God. That's from Charles Spurgeon. They have these it's basically a collection of quotations for the day. So you've already seen one starts from the Bible and then they give you a couple others. I want to scale the utmost height and catch a gleam of glory bright, but still I'll pray till heaven I've found. Lord, lead me on to higher ground. Not many of us are living at our best. We linger in the lowlands because we are afraid to climb the mountains. The steepness and ruggedness dismay us, and so we stay in the misty valleys and do not learn the mystery of the hills. We do not know what we lose in our self-indulgence, what glory awaits us if we had only had courage for the mountain climb, what blessing we should find if only we would move to the uplands of God. Too low they build who build beneath the stars. And that's from J.R.M., and I have no idea who that is. So that's the reading for today. Streams in the Desert. I would say go pick one up at books at Beachtown Books, but I got the only copy they had from 1925, and it was a special edition. It was the original edition, not the first printing, but the first edition. And they have done a remake of this and taken out some of the politically incorrect references, which are not really offensive unless you pretend that being politically correct is the key to morality, which it's not. All right, here we go. We're in Bill Voegeli again. I want to thank Claremont Review of Books for making this material available. It's volume 25, number 1, winter 2025. And How Woke Broke the Democrats, essay by William Voegeli. It's the cover. I'm showing the cover for those of you who are listening. So this is what you get in the mail when you make a subscription. I have a subscription, as you can tell. They do not have this behind a paywall, so I'm going to go ahead and let you see it because it's available to the public, to anybody who goes to the website. They don't have ads on the website, I don't think. At least I don't see any. And so I want you to see that if you go up here, you can see the login option. Well, if you just search "now what," it comes up, and it's ClaremontReviewBooks.com/now-what, and it's by Bill Voegeli. Now scroll down, and we're in the insanity defense, which is where we left off last time. A private enterprise. Not to bring up health food, but let us continue. Get it? Maybe it was a bad, I don't know. The insanity defense, a private enterprise whose brand was significantly less popular than its main competitors, would be forced to take drastic steps. You would think. We're going to do a fair use of this. We're going to make a transformative reading, do a transformative reading, make a fair use of this. We want to thank Bill Voegeli for writing this. I think he's one of the best writers in American politics, like I've said. But even in business, I got to turn the page. I got to turn the page, guys. Remember? Do you guys remember Rush Limbaugh? He would crinkle the pages. But even in business, is supposed to be agnostic. about how profits get made, so long as they get made. Myopia and inertia exert great force. That's not who we are. And that's not how we do things. Have no logical power, but a large psychological impact. It is otherwise difficult to explain why, in 2000, Blockbuster summarily rejected an offer to buy a startup called Netflix for $50 million. Netflix, now among the world's most valuable corporations, has a market capitalization exceeding 400 billion. That's billion as in B as in dog. B as in B as in door. Not B as in anyway. That was a stupid joke. Wow, that's a huge. But Blockbuster went the other direction. After peaking in 2004 with over 9,000 retail outlets that rented and sold videotapes and DVDs, the company filed for bankruptcy in 2010. That's so sad. I loved Blockbusters, and I would still go if I could. A political party is as susceptible as any business to the human failings of being short-sighted and complacent. But to these, a party adds unique complications of its own. It adds unique complications of its own. Its internal debates over which politician, group, or cause to blame for an election defeat are, at bottom, protracted campaigns by each element of the party's coalition to avoid any responsibility or consequences. Two things that can both be true then are one, the Democratic brand has been damaged by close association with the social justice agenda, terminology, and worldview, which are highly popular with the subset of voters who identified as progressives, but I should say so-called progressives, but which mystify and offend a much larger portion of the electorate. And two, social justice adherents will insist on any and every other explanation for the Democrats' 2024 defeat and 2025 quandary before they admit the possibility that their own words and deeds are an important reason for the party's damaged brand. So good. This is so good. How much more do we got? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Oh, we got a lot. We got a lot today. Man, I got to get through this. Come on. I got an agenda. I'm a J on the Myers-Briggs. I got an agenda. Got to be on time. All right. Well, I'm enjoying this, so I might as well enjoy it. Again, it is true, of course, that there will be several independent variables that have come some significant explanatory power in a close national election with over 152 million voters. The toxic mix of hubris and cognitive decline that led Joe Biden to, I actually don't think it's pronounced Joe Biden. I think it's Ho Biden. Kind of embarrassing for him. I mean, is it San Josie? No. Is it Trader? It's Trader Joe's. I did that joke at a 98% Hispanic classroom in Cesar Chavez High School in Los Angeles. I couldn't get the students back for 15 minutes. They were laughing. They, I heard them in the hallways telling everybody Trader Joe's. They were laughing so hard. So I learned not to do that because I want them to pay attention. But ironically, they kind of did start paying attention after that. So maybe it was actually good. I think it was so shocking to them. What I did was I corrected that because they're all Hispanic, and I corrected them on the pronunciation of a grocery store called Vallarta. They said Vallarta. I said, "How's it spelled?" They said, well, two L's, and I said, "Oh, those are L's. It's Vallarta." And they were like, and I said, "Yeah." And then I said, "How do you pronounce San Jose?" And they said San Jose. And I said, "How do you pronounce Trader Joe's?" That's when I lost them. Yeah. And I did it with a straight face. And then I just went back to lecturing on metaphysics or whatever. And it's really hard to keep their attention. So we try our best with our little tricks. Um, all right. Well, anyway, Ho Biden. The toxic mix of hubris and cognitive decline. I actually lost where we were. I had to get more coffee. Oh yeah, Ho Biden. Sorry about that. The toxic mix of hubris and cognitive decline that led Ho Biden to seek re-election to a term that would have kept him in the presidency beyond his 86th birthday put the Democrats at a disadvantage, one that even a nominee more capable than Kamala Harris would have struggled to overcome. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tell us more, Bill. And voters were angry about the economy. According to exit polls, 33% of them believed that economic conditions were poor. Of that group, 88% voted for Trump. Another 35% said the economy was not so good, 52% of whom voted for Trump. In other words, the 68% of the electorate that gave the economy low marks provided Donald Trump with 47.2% of the popular vote, nearly the entirety of the 49.8% he ended up with. Um, so let me just comment here on this paragraph right here. That would indicate that the Republicans need to get credit for helping the economy, and to get credit and to deserve credit are not exactly the same thing. But uh, one should strive to deserve the credit and do what you can to make sure that the connection is being made between deserving the credit and getting the credit. And I would say that the tariff issue is one of the main challenges that Republicans face right now. I'm not sure that everybody understands or agrees with the tariff strategy that Trump has in mind, and I'm not sure he's explaining it well enough. And I'm not even sure he's his use of the tariffs has been clear-eyed. But um, I actually think they have done some good. I'm not smart enough to know the entire thing, obviously. We'll see what happens, but it's one of the issues. And actually the spring issue of Claremont Review of Books, they bring this issue up. So when I get that copy, they didn't send it to me. I had to request. They sent me an extra edition of the winter one, so I called and they're going to send it to me. When I get that copy, we'll do an episode on tariffs. We might do 2 episodes on tariffs, so that'll be probably in October. Okay, let's keep going. But voters not only view presidential candidates through the lens of the economy, they also view the economy through their judgments about the competing candidates and parties. Some portion of the 47.2% of the electorate who thought the economy was in bad shape and voted for Trump felt economic conditions were objectively bad. Yeah. Some other portion, having arrived at a negative view of the Biden Harris administration in general, stopped giving Democrats the benefit of the doubt about gray area aspects of the economy. This consideration leaves open the possibility that the Democrats' identity as the social justice party played a significant role in their 2024 defeat and subsequent travails, a hypothesis further supported by polling data. In the days immediately following the election, the Democratic polling firm Blueprint released a study weighing various reasons that account for people voting against Kamala Harris. Participants were given random pairs of reasons from a list of 25 possible arguments against the Democratic ticket. The reason chosen most often in such face-offs had the highest score. The one taken least often, the lowest. On this basis, Blueprint assigned inflation was too high under the Biden-Harris administration, a score of plus 24, since it was the preferred option in 74% of the binary trials, 24 percentage points more than random chance would predict. Coming in a close second, plus 23, was too many immigrants illegally crossing the border under the Biden-Harris administration. Winning the bronze medal with plus 17 was Kamala Harris is focused more on cultural issues like transgender issues rather than helping the middle class. Are you getting this? Are you getting this? This is Democratic source. He said Democratic polling firm. That's what he said. Why do you think we're covering transgender stuff here on the Republican Professor? Bostock versus Clayton County. We haven't done anything on illegal immigration on the Republican Professor. Um, but let's continue. The impact of cultural issues on the electorate is even greater than this study's raw score would suggest. Blueprint points out that while the cultural issues criticism finished third among all voters, it finished first with plus 25 among swing voters and first plus 28 among swing voters who ultimately voted for Trump. The Trump campaign would not have made a heavy commitment to running its most resonant ad, which began with footage of Harris endorsing taxpayer funding for gender reassignment surgery for every transgender inmate in the prison system, unquote, and concluded with the tagline, Kamala is for they, them. President Trump is for you. Wow, that is a great line. I don't like marketing, but I have to I admire that a little bit. If Trump advisors doubted that high visibility for the ad was moving the needle in their favor. Wow. Guys. That's that. That's the quote right there. That's the ad. That was the winning ad. Uh, Freaking advertising. There is also a significant overlap between immigration and cultural questions as campaign issues. The most direct link mentioned in the they them ad was that Harris, as a presidential candidate in 2019, had also endorsed taxpayer provided gender transition surgery for people held in immigration detention, to use the term provided by the ACLU questionnaire in her campaign filled out. I support policies ensuring that federal prisoners and detainees are able to obtain medically necessary care for gender transition, including surgical care, while incarcerated or detained, was Harris's response. We're in Bill Voegeli's Now What? The Democrats After 2024, Claremont Review of Books, the winter issue of 2025. We're on page 10 of the print edition. I'm reading from the print edition, which is my copy that I purchased. And since they have it available to the public, I'm also showing you how to get there online so that you can maybe, I don't know, go over there and support them, give them some money, subscribe, tell other people about it, tell a friend about it. Make leaflets, rent a helicopter, and I don't know, spread the leaflets around Democrat cities. More broadly, they probably wouldn't read it because there's so much trash in Democrat cities, so they would just think it's just another piece of trash. Maybe you should just spread it in, like, you know, purple places that are clean so that they'll look at it before they throw it away. Like, what is this? More broadly, the woke belief that immigration restriction was immoral and illegitimate figured heavily in Biden administration policies that curtailed border enforcement, especially through executive orders Biden signed in 2021. Predictably, illegal border crossings soared to record levels under President Biden, averaging 2 million per year from 2021 to 2023, as the Washington Post reported in July 2024. Also predictably, 15.6% of the U.S. population is now foreign born, a higher percentage than at any point during the Ellis Island era of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Kind of a wake-up call. When Joe Biden and then Kamala Harris prepared to face the voters and confront the fact that, as political analyst Roy Texera wrote on Substack in October 2024, loosening restrictions on illegal immigration was a terrible idea and voters hated it. Border enforcement finally went up and border crossings went down. Even this 11th hour course correction elicited denunciations, reflecting the social justice thinking that had been crucial to the Biden administration's policies in the first place. Immigration is good. We should consider ourselves lucky to have had so much, and we should strive to have more. Journalist Felipe de la Hoz wrote in the New Republic in September 2024. This psychopathic and, you can say it, white supremacist fixation on punishment and control of migration is not just a moral stain, but a disastrous economic policy, unquote. Apparently, that's the same guy. In the Democrats' insanity defense, a pre-election essay for Tablet magazine, journalist Park McDougald said that demands and rhetoric like Delahoe's had become so common and so extreme that it even caused a problem for Republicans. I'm listening. Quote, when you outline the Democratic agenda, you have to water it down because in both polling and focus groups, people just don't believe it, unquote. One Republican campaign advisor told McDougall. I have LOL in the side of the paragraph there in the margin. Wow. The Republicans had to even water it down so that people would just believe it. Yeah. So they had to kind of misrepresent it to the voters because that's how bad it was. And despite formulaic, facile railing against white supremacism, the 2024 results argue that it is woke whites who are noticeably arrogant and out of touch. I got a little check mark next to that in the margin. In a post-election article for The Guardian, columnist John Harris cited polling data showing that Black and Hispanic voters are more favorably disposed than white progressives to such proportions as, quote, most people can make it if they work hard, unquote, and, quote, government should increase border security and enforcement, unquote. Quote, growing chunks of the electorate, unquote, Harris concluded, are not who the left thinks they are. Wow. Which cannot help but be a serious problem for the Democratic Party, since, in Harris's words, the most vivid element in a comprehensive account of Trump's victory is about the left, and one inescapable fact that a lot of people simply do not like us. Hmm. Power and purpose. In the aftermath of an electoral defeat, a party's two goals, acquiring power and furthering the causes for which the party seeks power in the first place, are in conflict. Since the election returns indicate the unpopularity of the party's basic commitments as the public perceives them, staying the course is likely to result in future defeats. But to jettison or even modify those commitments also runs serious risks. The party might antagonize or demoralize its base and wind up losing more supporters than it gains. And even if a tactical or messaging shift leads to election victories, the return to power will constrain the party's pursuit of objectives it still cares about. Thus, defeats usually set off internal contests, often heated. After all, a major political party is, in reality, a diverse, often contentious coalition of numerous entities pursuing various goals by various means. As the center are elected officials themselves, at the center are elected officials themselves. Sorry, I've got a huge grease stain right where I'm not sure how that got there. It must have gotten there on Tap That Ash, where I was there reading. Tap That Ash is a speakeasy in Orange County. Ash as in cigar ash for smoking cigars. It's a wonderful place. I mentioned it in the first episode of this series here, the last one. I'm trying to read this here. At the center are elected officials themselves whose reputations, ambitions, and political careers depend on striking the right balance between securing power and vindicating preferred uses of that power. The early signals from the 262 Democrats serving in the 119th Congress are that despite the GOP's 2024 victories, the social justice cause retains a secure place in the Democratic Party. One of the first orders of business in January 2025 was a Republican priority, the Laken-Riley Act, named for a 22-year-old nursing student murdered in 2024 by an illegal immigrant, which requires the federal government to detain any migrant charged with or arrested for violent crimes, theft, burglary, or assaulting a law enforcement officer. Over 70% of the Democrats in each chamber voted against the bill, which became the first one that President Trump signed into law in his second term. Of the 12 Democratic senators who voted for it, 35 were against. 9 were from states that Trump carried in 2024, with another 2 from New Hampshire, the state he lost most narrowly. In the House, 48 Democrats voted for the bill, 159 voted against, and 8 abstained. No Republican in either chamber voted against it, the Laken-Riley Act. The vote for the Laken-Riley Act by one Democratic House member, Richie Torres, serving his third term from a district in the Bronx, was no surprise. The day after the 2024 election, Torres posted on X, "Donald Trump has no greater friend than the far left, which has managed to alienate historic numbers of Latinos, blacks, Asians, and Jews from the Democratic Party with absurdities like defund the police or from the river to the sea or Latin X." This is a quote from Torres, the representative from the Bronx, Democrat. "There is more to lose than there is to gain politically from pandering to the far left," he continues. "That is more representative of Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok than of the real world. The working class is not buying the ivory-towered nonsense that the far left is selling," unquote. That whole thing was a quote from Torres about the Trump and the Laken-Riley Act, him voting for it. Well, actually, that was before he voted for the Laken-Riley Act, but it prefigures why he voted for it. Okay, here's Voegeli. Here's Bill, going back to Bill here. "Not only is Torres outnumbered in the Democratic caucus, but even colleagues who do share his thinking are reluctant to antagonize the party's social justice vanguard. Congressman Adam Smith, who has represented a district in Seattle area for 28 years, recently told the New Yorker that the Democratic Party's biggest problem is that too many of its policymakers spend too much time pushing an extreme left ideology by policing language on things like pronouns, what given ethnic groups should be called, and in general, re-educating everyone about the evils of capitalism and all the systematic failures of America over the course of 400 years. Yet Smith voted no on the Laken-Riley Act, making a case against it that was more vigorous than rigorous. That's a horrible use of our resources and terrible policy. I'm not going to vote for terrible policy just to make it appear that I'm not in favor of the left, unquote. Okay. How are you guys doing? Hanging in there? A strong shadow. An even angrier attack on the Lake and Riley Act came from Sarah Dahl, chief campaign officer of the social justice organizing group Indivisible. Spineless, she said, was the only word for congressional Democrats who helped advance the legislation. She also called the bill a racist, xenophobic attack on immigrants that shreds constitutional rights, adding, it's not just cruel, it's a train wreck of chaos and bad faith. Miss Dahl is not a politician in the sense that congressmen like Torres and Smith are, yet she is clearly in politics with a leadership position in a 501c4 nonprofit that spent $12 million, according to its most recent available tax returns, to elect progressive leaders, rebuild our democracy, and defeat the Trump agenda in its website description. Where have all the Democrats gone? By John B. Judas and Roy Tuxera. Oh. Where have all the Democrats gone? By John B. Judas and Roy Tuxera discusses shadow parties, a term it defines as the activist groups, think tanks, foundations, publications, and websites, and big donors, and prestigious intellectuals who are not a part of official party organizations, but who influence and are identified with one or the other of the parties. The Democratic Shadow Party, according to Judas and Tuxera, includes donors from Wall Street, Hollyweird. No, sorry, that's me. He didn't say Hollyweird. I said that. Hollywood, Silicon Valley, think tanks like Center for American Progress and Peterson Institute, foundations like Ford and George Soros's Open Society, political groups like the Working Families Party, the Human Rights Campaign, and Black Lives Matter, publications like the New York Times, Washington Post, and New Yorker, media networks like MSNBC, Substackers, bloggers, and tweeters, and hundreds of smaller groups headquartered in the post-industrial metro centers and college towns who often communicate through social media. Now we're into the review of the books. And so these are always essays that are about books, about how they're received and how Claremont thinks that they should be received. And I know you're asking about these pens that I have in my pocket. This again is Carol Watson Orange Coast Auctions, 1501 North Raymond's Avenue, Suite B, Anaheim, California. And you can get there by just Googling it. It's a wonderful pen, and it's a wonderful family-owned business. This other pen is Skillcraft U.S. Government. Huh, never heard of that company before. Pretty reliable pens. Let's continue. They're not paid sponsors, by the way. There is also a Republican shadow party. Where have all the Democrats gone? Mentions the Koch Network. Never heard of that guy. Turning Point USA, Fox News, and the Claremont Institute. Whoa! As parts of it. But the asymmetry is more pronounced than the symmetry. For one thing, the constitutive elements of the Democratic Shadow Party are far wealthier and more prominent than their GOP counterparts. Oh, yes. The Ford Foundation endowment is $16 billion. Wow. Most of that was made on the Pinto, on the Ford Pinto, if you can believe that. Oh, man. The Ford Taurus is probably a big chunk of that too. Remember the station wagon? For example, compared to the 987 million held by the Lind and Harry Bradley Foundation. Harvard University's endowment is 53.2 billion, dwarfs that of Hillsdale College, 972 million. With more than 11 million subscribers, the New York Times not only has a far larger audience than Fox News, but averages 2.384 million primetime viewers. Sorry. Which Fox News, which averages 2.384 million primetime viewers in 2024, but has an unmatched capacity to influence the form and substance of the nation's political debates. The Democratic shadow party is not only more formidable than its Republican counterparts, but wields greater power within its own party coalition. That's for sure. That's for sure. Republican politicians and voters pay less attention to intellectuals, including Republican ones. Ask me how I know. Ask me how I know. We might say that the Democratic shadow party is strong enough to cast a shadow of its own. This matters in the aftermath of 2024 because the disparate elements of a shadow party are alike in having the latitude to care more about ideological purity than political victory. That's very thought provoking. Very thought provoking. Indeed, in every sector of the Democratic shadow party described by Judas and Texera, it is better for one's reputation and career to put forward maximal claims that advance favored causes than to recommend caution and compromise out of respect for the limits of public opinion. Idealistic professors, crusading writers, activists like Sarah Dahl from organizations that want to raise funds for cutting edge projects, donors who want the gratification and admiration that come from funding such endeavors, all have compelling reason to disdain half measures and the people who pursue them. Better, in this view, to suffer a noble defeat than to secure a shabby victory. The shadow party, then, is at the heart of what former Vermont Governor Howard Dean, during his 2004 presidential campaign, hailed as the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. So far, the Democratic shadow party has given every indication that losing a national election to a man Democrats have denounced as a monster does not require and must not induce the party to recalibrate its commitment to social justice. The shadow party is determined to fight on this line because A, it can, and B, the people who populate it really, really want to. Wow. Mm. Conspicuous compassion. I got to get a drink. I'm going to have to heat my coffee up. I'll be back. I'll be back. Okay, we're going to finish this because I'm backed up on topics, man. There's like 40 or 50 ready to go. So we got to get through this today. It's going to be a little bit longer of an episode. Conspicuous compassion. Why they want to is the subject of We Have Never Been Woke, The Cultural Contradictions of a New Elite by sociologist Musa Al-Gharbi. Published 1 month before the 2024 election, the book examines those whom Al-Gharbi calls symbolic capitalists. That is, rather than concentrate on producing and acquiring material wealth by rendering goods and services, these are people whose place in society depends primarily on prestige, recognition, and the deference of others. Examples of the professions where these considerations predominate include academics, consultants, journalists, administrators, lawyers, and people who work in finance and tech. This group is now the Democratic Party base. Divide the electorate by income segments, and Kamala Harris did best among the 13% of all voters who had a household income of at least 200,000, winning them 52 to 46. Divide it by educational attainments, and she won voters with a postgraduate degree, 19% of the total electorate, by a landslide, 59 to 38%. Algarby relates that he got the idea for writing his book in 2016 when, as a recently arrived graduate student at Columbia University, one of the country's most prestigious, selective, and expensive schools, he observed the large number of students and faculty who were too distraught after Donald Trump's election victory to complete assignments or hold classes. LOL is what I say in the margin there. I remember that, getting those emails. If anybody needs counseling. I never got those emails after Obama won. No one offered me counseling. It occurred to him, yeah, it occurred to him that the dog that didn't bark was that none of these progressive champions of the marginalized and the exploited gave any thought to Columbia's support staff, especially the largely Black and Hispanic. Got to turn the page again, guys. Got to turn the page. Turn the page again. The largely Black and Hispanic. Yeah, tell us about these Black and Hispanic support staff. Workforce that prepares students meals, mops their buildings, hallways, might even have been upset about the election and need some time and space to reflect and gather themselves, right? Oh, that is so good. This is a great part of this essay right here. I remember reading this. Yeah. 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 What about the support staff? They might have also been upset about the election and needed some time and space to reflect and gather themselves. No one seems to have asked. That's a shocker. That's a shocker. Shocker. Instead of receiving days off to attend support group sessions, however, these hourly workers did just what the entire campus took for granted. They clocked in the morning after Election Day and began their labors. We have never been woke argues that for symbolic capitalists, social justice is not just a political cause, but also a shrewd, advantageous way to get on in the world. According to Thorsten Veblen's classic, The Theory of Leisure Class, the key to status competition in the Gilded Age was conspicuous consumption. Algarby argues, in effect, that the key to status competition in the internet age is conspicuous compassion. Wokeness has become a key source of cultural capital among contemporary elites, he writes, allowing them to be seen as interesting, sophisticated, and empathetic, a reputation that is not only good in itself, but good for the tangible rewards it confers in career and social advancement. Scrolling down a little bit to keep you guys, I'm trying to keep it where I'm reading. I'm reading the print version. Yeah. This makes sense to conservatives who assume that anyone who claims to take seriously the idea of 74 genders must have ulterior motives. But Al-Gharbi contends that there's no conflict between sincere commitment to a political viewpoint and taking advantage of the life enhancements afforded by that commitment. As a rule, he argues, symbolic capitalists likely believe the things they say. Yet, it is simultaneously true that, quote, liberals exploit social justice advocacy to make themselves feel good, but ultimately offer up little more than symbolic gestures and platitudes to redress the material harms they decry and often exacerbate, unquote. Amen, brother. Amen. For example, the professions that progressives have come to dominate, such as law, medicine, higher education, grant making foundations, nonprofit organizations, and journalism, are accorded legitimacy and prestige based on their claims to altruism and serving higher principles or the public good. Since the progressive era, the widespread acceptance of these claims has provided the basis for the high levels of pay, prestige, deference, and autonomy that symbolic capitalists enjoy. It makes perfect sense that people who aspire to join and advance in these careers would make deploring social injustices a core component of their professional and personal identities. That's a good point. This is filled with great stuff. Guys, if you don't know, Bill Voegeli is one of my favorite writers on American politics. Again, we're reading from uh, Now What? The Democrats After 2024. It's a book review of two books, and it's got a lot of Bill's reflections on that campaign here. It's in Claremont Review of Books, Winter 24-25, page 14 now in the print edition. Thanks for Claremont Review of Books for making this material available. Of course, we're doing a fair use and transformative reading. We want to encourage more of this writing, more of Bill, more of Bill. And can I just suggest that you go to ClaremontReviewBooks.com and grab yourself a copy of this? Throw support their way. Get a subscription. You won't regret it. You're going to get 4 beautiful issues sent to your mailbox. It's just wonderful. Okay, continue on. Um, you don't advance in the conspicuous compassion status competition by volunteering in a soup kitchen. That's for sure. Mm, that's a good quote, man. That's a good quote. I love that quote. Put that on a coffee mug. It is far better to take a global view, to be compassionate toward millions rather than dozens of sufferers, and then to perform well compensated work as an academic, journalist, or activist, explaining how these victims suffer as a result of vast, complex systemic forces which can be defeated only by a vast, complex, comprehensive remedies, programs that will not succeed unless administered by other well compensated professionals. Damn, damn, that right there. That's, I think that's April in Natural Right magazine centerfold right there. Yeah. Put that in your calendar. Wow. That is a great quote. Yeah. These bureaucrats. In modern America, Al-Gharbi writes, highly educated people are much more likely than others to know what positions they should hold in view of their partisan or ideological identities. And we're more likely to align our beliefs to systematically accord with those identities. unquote. That's a quotation. The process selects for people who turn in their homework on time, intuitively decode the unwritten rules of the game, and cultivate mentors and allies who can help them get ahead. Moreover, the growing problem in recent decades of elite overproduction, too many PhDs chasing too few tenure track teaching jobs, the game of musical chairs for journalists and as media outlets downsize or close creates incentives to embrace and express ever more strident, sweeping versions of the social justice worldview. I got to read I'm going to show you what I'm looking at here on the print edition. You see that? In the middle of the print edition, every once in a while, they'll have just a nice quote. Zoom is not cooperating with me. Sorry. Trying to keep my background private. So I have a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge behind me on YouTube through Zoom. But Zoom is obviously Democrat right now. They're a Democrat. We know YouBoob is Democrat. Jeez. Hell. You would think that it would be as simple as having a camera and having the damn quotation right there. It's not up on the YouTube, or sorry, on the website. I'll give this one more try. All right, you see that big quotation in the middle? They have nice big quotations like that. All that for that. Jeez. Zoom. At least you know I'm not a robot, all right? Yeah, you know what I mean? That's where we're at, guys. At least you know I'm not a robot. For whatever that's worth. I'm just a frail human being trying to make a difference. In modern America. In modern America. Where the hell am I? Well, I'll read that big quote since I tried so hard to put it on the screen. Donald Trump's superpower, getting on the 80 side of the 80-20 issues, requires nothing more than unwrapping gifts the Democratic Party delivers when it lays claim to the 20 side of those issues. That's great. You know what? I'm going to take a picture of that. I'm going to post that on Twitter. I'm going to twit that out on my Twitter account. Algarby's critique of the symbolic capitalist is from the left. Though he does not really upbraid them for failing to be better leftists, nor sketch out what a better left would look like, he includes himself, an assistant professor at Stony Brook University, have never been woke in the sense that progressives' denunciations of inequalities were never meant to be even minimally effective, despite, or in some cases because of, the maximally being that maximally assertive. The engine driving social justice activism, Algarby observes, is frustrated erstwhile elites condemning the social order that failed them and jockeying to secure the position they feel they deserve. Under these conditions, symbolic capitalists grow much more aggressive in mobilizing social justice discourse to paint themselves as worthy of power and wealth, and to declare their adversaries and rivals as undeserving of the same. These preoccupations render social justice egalitarianism simultaneously radical and trivial. We Have Never Been Woke approvingly quotes two leftist professors who wrote, "The implication of proportionality as the metric of social justice is that the society would be just if 1% of the population controlled 90% of the resources, so long as 13% of the 1% were black, 14% were Hispanic, half were women, etc." The struggle for status and security within the professions dominated by social justice concerns also stresses the need to anathematize wrongthink and its dangerous, poorly educated, misinformed, mean spirited adherents. To voice the idea that controversial issues like immigration enforcement and gender identity are ones decent and reasonable people can disagree on is a grave career misstep for the adjunct professor, public interest lawyer, or cleric in declining mainland Protestant denominations. High on the list of things that the woke are awake to is the critical importance of loudly condemning deviations from social justice orthodoxy. Thus, the Wednesday after the election day 2024, Gilberto Hinojosa, chairman of the Texas Democratic Party, said in a public radio station interview that his party would have to choose. You can support transgender rights up and down all the categories where the issue comes up, or you can understand that there's certain things that we just go too far on, and that a big bulk of our population does not support. By the end of the day, Yosa had apologized on social media. I recognize the pain and frustration my words have caused, in frustration over the GOP's lies to incite hate for trans communities. I failed to communicate my thoughts with care and clarity, unquote. That was a quote from him on, I guess, Twitter, something like that. By the end of the week, he announced his retirement after 12 years as chairman. We're on page 14 still. The nation hates the nation. Scott Jennings, the token right-wing troublemaker on CNN shouting matches, recently observed that Donald Trump's superpower consists in getting the 80 side on the 80 side of the 80-20 issues. As a rule, this superpower requires nothing more than unwrapping gifts the Democratic Party delivers to him when it proudly lays claim to the 20 side of those issues. According to an Ipsos poll taken January 2025 for the New York Times, 79% of Americans oppose allowing athletes who were born male but currently identify as female to compete in women's athletic competitions. Among respondents who are Democratic voters, 67% oppose this practice. 71% of Americans, including 54% of Democrats, favor prohibiting doctors from prescribing puberty blocking drugs or hormone therapy to minors between the ages of 10 and 18. 87% of all respondents support and 66% strongly support deporting immigrants who are in the United States illegally and have criminal records. 83% of Democratic voters support such deportations, including 49% who strongly support it. Damn. That's not Bill, that's me. He didn't say damn in his piece, just like right in the middle there. To keep swimming Against such currents requires strong convictions, bolstered by the implicit but powerful understanding that these convictions confer significant psychological and material benefits. Every indication since November 2024 is that the Democratic Shadow Party is up to the task. Its least prudent but most candid response came in the immediate aftermath of the 2024 election. Several commenters argued that Trump's win vindicated the most fevered denunciations of American society as a matrix of interlocking oppression situated on stolen land, pervaded by Eurocentric, I don't even know how to say that word, hetero patriarchal institutions and practices. In essayist Wellesley Yang's summary on X, one of those parodies of woke speak indistinguishable from the real thing. the the 2024 election was, in this view, a chance for American voters to meet the most basic standards of decency and civic competence, a test they failed miserably. We, here's another quote, as a nation, have proven ourselves to be a fetid, violent people, and we deserve a leader who embodies the worst of us. Ely Mistel wrote in The Nation. Trump won because he saw us for how truly based, depraved, and uninformed we are as a country. Another Nation columnist, Kaylee Holloway, wrote the month after the election that Trump's victory means those of us who voted for Harris weren't betrayed by the archaic, undemocratic Electoral College, but by our neighbors, our coworkers, and the strangers we pass on the street. Okay. The month before the election, Holloway had written a New Republic cover story. America is so ready for Kamala Harris. uh, I remember reading this at Tap That Ash in Orange County, the speakeasy I just mentioned. Cigars, Tap That Ash, ASH for cigars, cigar ash. I, I remember seeing this. This lady, Kaylee Holloway, wrote a month after the election just this scathing, secular prophetic, which is a contradiction in terms, uh, denunciation of America. But right before that, she had written a New Republic cover story. America is so ready for Kamala Harris, which explained that momentum was on Harris's side because she had brought together a diverse swath of voters who share an eagerness to get beyond the toxic divisions that have plagued the country since the rise of MAGA. You can't make this stuff up. By December, Holloway was blaming herself for having underestimated America's inherent racism and misogyny. Of course, she can't define what a woman is, so that's a little awkward, nor can she define race, which has repeatedly culminated in its violent rejection of multiracial democracy. She probably can't define democracy either. What is wrong with America? Asked Sonny Hostin of ABC's The View on the day after the election. What is wrong with this country that they would choose a message of divisiveness, of xenophobia, of racism, of misogyny over a message of inclusiveness? Well, aren't you not including us? Two New York Times columnists watched Donald Trump's victory speech on election night, then filed paraphrases of the same column. Stop pretending Trump is not who we are was the title of Carlos Lozada's. He urged readers to disabuse themselves of the comforting notion that Trumpism is a temporary ailment. when it is better understood as a pre-existing condition. This is who we are now, was the title of Michelle Goldberg's, who wrote her desire to block out the humiliating truth about what my country has decided to become. Okay. Okay. A political party is not a suicide pact, so it will ultimately repudiate a shadow party whose electoral strategy is to lecture voters about how hateful they are. But a party can resist for a long time concessions to noxious realities about popular opinion. The Democratic Party had to lose 3 straight presidential elections in the 1980s before it turned to Bill Clinton, a nominee who spoke centrism fluently and, as president, intermittently walked that walk. One fascinating element in the coming story of how quickly and sharply the Democrats course correct after 2024 involves President Trump's success in draining the swamp. He appears serious about achieving in his second term the transformations that eluded him in his first, eradicating offices of diversity, equity, and inclusion in government, business, and nonprofits, defunding public broadcasters, ending public subsidies for leftist nonprofit organizations, and re-democratizing the administrative state. Should Trump succeed bigly, one collateral effect will be that Musa al-Gharbi's symbolic capitalists will face a far more severe problem of elite overproduction, since there will be significantly fewer prestigious, comfortable positions available for the highly credentialed, aspiring elitists who feel entitled to them. We have one more paragraph left. Yay! If most respond to increased competition by intensifying their commitment to social justice, the disjunction between what the Democratic Party feels compelled to say and what the American people want to hear will become even more acute. Another possibility, however, is that elite overproduction will become so serious that many people decide to get out of the competition altogether in order to pursue livelihoods that depend on the quality of the goods or services they produce, rather than burnishing their personal brand. This development would pose a different sort of danger for the Democratic Party, since it sounds like a description of the base of the Republican Party under Donald Trump. William Voegeli is senior editor of the Claremont Review-of-Books. What a fantastic read. This has been Now What? The Democratic Party After 2024. Claremont Review-of-Books, page 15 is where we ended. And I want to thank you for joining me on the Republican Professor podcast. I've been your host, Dr. Lucas J. Mather, and this has been just a wonderful time for me. I hope that you have fun as well. And I want to let you know that it's 9 September 2025, years after Jesus. I got CBS tonight in Old Town Orange at Calvary Chapel. Community Bible study. It's a men's group. It's about 70 men. I don't know. I haven't counted, but it's quite a few tables. It's at least 7 tables, and they seem to be filled. They're not all have 10 men, but I think it's probably about 70 people. Some join online. We're going through the Psalms this year, and we follow the academic year, and we meet at night at 6:30, 7, and we go to 8:30. I usually have to leave around 8 because I have other responsibilities that I can't attend to. It's probably disproportionately aging or retired men, but there are some young whippersnappers like me there. I want you to encourage you to find a good fellowship, a good Bible study, find a good church if you don't have one. And I look forward to seeing you on the next edition of The Republican Professor. See you.